गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनार्दन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनार्दन यमुनातीराचारी यमुनातीराचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा माधव जय राधा दास बिहारी राधे जय गौरांगी बैंगलोरेश्वर गौरांगी जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शन जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय अनंत देव प्रहलाद नरसिंह जय अनंत देव जय गौरानीताय जय निताय चैतन्य जय निताय चैतन्य जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल हरि नाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाचार्य स्तोत्र शत His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाचार्य स्तोत्र शत His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नवाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीवा गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शिव गोस्वामी प्रभुगण की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण चंद्र गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय श्री क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय द्वारिका धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय कावेरी माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय लसी महारानी की जय विदंगा की जय ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories and glories and glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamti Jade. नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतं सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुलं गायतीं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदिनतारिणं परमानन्दं माधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं हरि ओम तत्सत्. Hare Krishna, and welcome all the devotees to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class, and we will be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 31, and today's text is text number 12. Just trying to share my screen. Just give me a minute. Janturvacha tasya upsannam avitum jagadechayata nanatano bhuvi chalata charana viravinda saham vrajami sharanam hi akuta bhayame yena itrishi gati atrashi asta anurupa. Janturvacha tasya upasanam avitum jagadiccha atta nanatano bhuvi chalata charanarvindam saham vrajami sharanam hi akuta bhayame yena idrasi gati adarshi astana anurupam. Jantuvacha tasya upasanam avitam jagadiccha atta nanatano bhuvi chalata charanarvindam saham rajami sharanam hi akuta bhayami yena idrashi gati adarshi asta anurupam. Word to word translation. Chantuvacha, the human soul says, Tasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Upasanam, having approached for protection, Havitum, to protect, Jagat, the universe, Ichhaya, by his own will, Attananatano, who accepts various forms, Bhuvi, on earth, Chalat, walking, Charanaravindam, the lotus feet, Saham, I myself, Vrajami go, Sharanam, unto the shelter, he indeed, Akuta Bhayam, giving relief from all fear, me, for me, Yena, by whom, Idrishi, such, Gati, condition of life, Adrishi was considered, Astaha, impious, Anurupa, befitting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. The word Chala Charanaravidam refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead who actually walks or travels upon the surface of the world. For example, Lord Ramachandra actually walked on the surface of the world, and Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. The prayer is therefore offered to Supreme Personality of Godhead who descends to the surface of earth or any part of the universe for the protection of the pious and destruction of the impious. Destructions of the impious. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that when there is an increase of irreligion and discrepancies arising in the real religion activities, the Supreme Lord comes to protect the pious and kills the impious. This verse indicates Lord Krishna. Another significant point in this verse is that the Lord comes ichchaya, by his own will, as Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavayama Atma Mayaya. I will appear at my own will, by my internal potency. He is not forced to come by the laws of material nature. It is stated here, ichchaya. He does not assume any form, as the impersonalists think, because he comes at his own will. And the form in which he descends is his eternal form. As the Supreme Lord puts the living entity into the condition of horrible existence, he can also deliver him. And therefore, one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna demands, give up everything and surrender to me. And it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who approaches him does not come back again to accept the form of material existence, but goes back to Godhead, back home, never to return. Om Tat Sat. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 31, text number 12. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Hita Shri Vishakhamvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanuste Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we continue our conversation where the soul is praying at the lotus feet of the Lord. And this conversation has been going on for quite some time. If we go back to the third canto, starting, just give you a little curtain raiser. Third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam begins with Kardam Muni being there, and then parents of Mother Devahuti wanting Devahuti to get married, and Devahuti decides that she will get married to Kardam Muni, and because he was the most qualified person at that point of time. And Kardam Muni is requested, and post that Kardam Muni marries Mother Devahuti, and Mother Devahuti desires to have children, and Kardam Muni reminds her, saying that once the children are there, I'm going to go to the forest. And then they have daughters, and after the daughters, they have finally Kapila as their son. The Lord Supreme Personality of Godhead himself comes as the son to Devahuti and Kardam Muni. And then, soon after this, Kardam Muni leaves the house, goes to the forest. Mother Devahuti brings up the child, Kapila Muni, and Kapila Muni, over a period of time, gives knowledge to his mother. Again, we also discussed saying that there should not be age bar or any bar on person, age or relationship which is there. So we should not say that you're my son, so you can't give me knowledge, or you're my daughter, so you can't give me knowledge. Anybody gives knowledge becomes a guru. It can be outsider or somebody from within the family. So here we see that Mother Devahuti is being given knowledge by Kapila Muni, and Kapila Muni talks of various things. And in this particular chapter, 31st chapter, it is talking about the prayers of the soul. And in the previous 11 verses, we heard devotees wonderfully describing as to how the soul suffers in the womb of the mother, and how the soul actually prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, saying that please get me out of this situation. I'm no more interested in coming here. But nevertheless, soon after the birth, Maya covers the person's intelligence, and then again that person falls into the material world and continues his normal activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So here in this particular verse, let's read the translation once. It says, the human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. So here, the soul is saying that I'm worshipping and I'm taking shelter at the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who actually appears on the surface of the Lord. It's not that one needs to concoct how the Lord looks, how he feels, and how he walks around. No. It has been seen because the Lord came himself on the surface of the world, on Bhuloka. He walked around. It is given the examples of Lord Ramachandra is given, the example of Lord Krishna is given, saying that he came and then he was amongst the other people around. And for various reasons, we think that he's like us. Yeah. It continues, the translation continues, it says, I take shelter of him only. This is very important. It says, I take shelter of him only because he gives me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this conditioned life, which is just befitting my impious activities. So the soul here says that, yes, I have done some impious activities of the past, and that is the reason that I am actually put into this conditioned life. And this conditioned life, he only gives me. Yeah. Because of him, I have received, or because he can only give me this conditioned life. And at the same time, in the translation, again, it says, he can give me relief from all fear. Very important, it confirms saying that this Supreme Personality of God, whom I surrender or I take full shelter, he actually gives me the conditioned life. At the same time, he gives me fear, relief from fear. Yeah. So very important understanding that Srila Prabhupada gives us here. And in the verse itself, we see starting of the verse, he says, these are very significant points. The Lord does not come on the will of a normal human being. He comes on the will, his own will. And yes, many times that we've seen on the desire of elevated devotees, on the desire of, very elevated devotees, when they pray to Krishna, that please come, and then Krishna comes. He appears only at his free will and by his internal potency. And he is not forced, like the mother in whose womb there is a child. Whatever happens, the child will not stay beyond 9 months, except for Shukadev Goswami, who stayed much longer. He did not want to come into this material world at all. But in the normal course scenario, no child will stay beyond 9 months in the womb of the mother. He has to be forced. He will be forced to come out by the laws of material nature. Yeah, it is the laws of material nature which actually get you into the material world. And it does not assume any form. You know, they also say the chaya. He does not assume any form. And the impersonalist, many times, we see this impersonalist says he comes like this, he comes like that. No, he comes out of his own free will. And the form in which he descends on the material world is also an eternal form. And finally, the Supreme Personality of God, it says, give up everything and surrender to me. I will take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything. Right? So here, it is the prayers of the living entity in the womb of his mother. It continues. It is only the human form. And these prayers can be done only in human form. It doesn't happen in any animal form. And the living entity says that I take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who walks on the surface of the earth and who gives relief from all fear. I take shelter of that Supreme Personality of Godhead who protects me as well. It is only Supreme Personality of Godhead who puts the living entity into this horrible material condition. And he's the only one who can liberate. You see the paradox that it is given in the purport. Srila Prabhupada speaks about both of them, saying that it is because of the Lord that I'm put into this horrible condition of the material life, conditioned soul. And he's the one who can liberate me. It is yes and it is no also at the same time. So it is very important to understand that Supreme Personality of Godhead can do anything. And the living entity in the human form is a very special form, unlike the other living entities in other forms, like animals or any other things. The human soul says that human being in the world largely do not remember God or their suffering, which is what is observed in this world. There are some atheists, there are some agnostics. This prayer is made by every entity. If somebody feels that I am atheist and I have never remembered God, that itself is a proof saying that he knows God, because he says, I've never remembered God. But nevertheless, at the starting, when the living entity is in the womb of the mother, every living entity, it can be an atheist or it can be an agnostic or it can be a devotee, the prayer is made by every entity in the womb of the mother. And this is confirmed by this observation that even if there's an atheist, he has some conception of God, that there is God. Because when he says, I don't believe in God, so that means he's accepting that there is God. I don't believe, but there is acceptance that there is God. Yeah. Awareness of God is there in every human being. To say that there is no God is also a level of consciousness, which is quite different from animal life. Yeah. Animal life, animals cannot say. Animals don't talk about God. But an atheist talks about God. So there is definitely a existence of God there, and the level of consciousness is there. The fact is that every human being has a concept of God. Due to his intense suffering in the womb of the mother, every entity speaks about this. If you are 20 years of age now, 20 years back, you have spoken to God, you have talked to God to remove your suffering. Every soul prays this. There is no exception. We don't have to think that only devotees who are in the womb of their mother pray that, no, I don't want this kind of life. Please take me out. Very nicely, 3-4 days back, there was a class where the devotees, I think Abhijit Prabhu was describing this, that it is the living entity is put in the womb of the mother. It is like you're sitting next to the washroom. There is bad smell. Well, there is, so much of water which is falling and all that. And nobody likes to be in that condition. So every living entity who's suffering in the womb of the mother speaks about this. It is not that only devotees suffer or atheists suffer. Everybody suffers in the womb of the mother. such a small place where cold, hot, everything comes together. There is mucus, there is bile secretion, there is urine, there is stool, everything gets, even if you think of such a situation, you feel bad. You don't like to discuss such a situation. Likewise, even if there's somebody, an atheist, who would have done that, in your mind or in your heart, they would have spoken about this to God. If somebody is 5 years old, then 5 years back. So this is at just before the time of birth, they would have spoken to the Lord. They would have expressed that desire never to come into this material world. But the moment they're out in the material world, Maya takes control of them and they forget all the prayers that they've done. And what was spoken? What does the soul speak while the soul is in the womb of the mother? It says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord who has walked on the surface of earth. There is no special education required for this. This is very simple. You don't need PhD degree to understand this at all. It says, I take the shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all the fear, and from him I have received this conditioned life, which is just befitting my impious activities. That's why human form is so important, that you remember God at the time of birth and you forget it very soon. Unless we consciously revive our connection with him. This connection has to be consciously revived. All of us remember that, we are a part and parcel of the Lord. At the time of our birth, we have prayed at the lotus feet of the Lord. At the childhood, our parents have taught us all of that. But we forget that very easily. Once the baby is out, he is almost like an animal, eating, meeting, defending, and sleeping. There's no difference between an animal, because animals also do this, and a human being who's doing all this without the consciousness is also an animal. There's no difference between that. The consciousness is completely covered in such a case scenario. The sukha and dukha, we start questioning. That's called Brahma Jigyasa. He had to encounter, he has had an encounter with the Lord. It is very precious life in the human form. Everything is civilized, more disciplined, so that the living entity can use its free will in the service of the Lord. Then you start questioning, who am I? What am I? Where have I come from? We also describe, or we ask questions about birth and death. We also ask questions about our existence and all of that. We also ask question, where was I before this? What was I doing? Yeah, realizing this slipping away from consciousness, as long as we think of this ourselves as the body. The slipping away of the consciousness actually happens because of that very, very simple thing, that we start slipping away from the consciousness and we start thinking on the bodily platform. So we can go beyond, false ego like the animal. The living entity realizes that I'm a spirit soul, I'm a servant of Krishna, I'm Brahman, a person who's part and parcel of Krishna. If one realizes that this body is going to fall apart, old age is going to come, disease is going to come, death is very fearful, then it strikes the mind that I have to be somewhere where I have to be. I'm a person. The person who thinks, who desires, who feels, who wills, becomes. It is like taking a role, when somebody gives you to play a role. In the temple, we have these dramas many times that we enact. And some devotees are made to become or act as king. Somebody is, acting as beggar. Somebody is acting as a brahmana. Somebody is acting as, Vaishya or a Shudra or, a prince or a princess. But then what happens is, yes, at that particular point of time, we play as king or beggar or, whatever is the role given to us. But then we, soon after the drama is over, we realize our original identity. We say, I am a part and parcel of Supreme Lord. But God, for all practical purposes, means Krishna. Sarva Karana Karana. He is the cause of all causes. Unless this tattva is understood, that I'm a part and parcel of Krishna, one cannot understand the reality. As far as he goes on talking about himself as a body, he talks about his well-being, he will never understand this tattva. The tattva that needs to be ingrained into our mind is saying that I am a part and parcel of Krishna. And then one thinks as God as another person like me with two hands and two legs, he will never be able to realize. If he thinks God is also as ordinary as I am, as I age, I start wearing glasses. As I age, I start using a stick. As I age, I start losing my hairs or my hairs turn gray. If somebody thinks on those lines with God, then he is not fit to be a qualified person, or he has not understood the tattva properly. Yeah. So for which one needs to think that I'm part and parcel of Krishna. So for this, association is required with Sat, the absolute truth, whose quality is Chit and Ananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions this very well. Mamaivanshe Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manasastrangyani Prakriti Sthani Karsati. What does it mean? This is Bhagavad Gita 15.7. The living entity in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with their six senses, which includes the mind. So one needs to get over this condition where it says, Mamaivanshe Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. They are my eternal parts. Krishna very clearly says in Bhagavad Gita. So God realization and understanding the common base. Every soul, however fallen it is very close to the Supreme Lord. Even if that person is doing very, very bad activities, he is very close. Krishna keeps him very close to him. He is very dear to Krishna. So because we come from him, so I cannot be separated. Krishna in some form or the other is connected with the living entity. And here again, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about it, saying that you alone can give me the relief from this life. It is only the human form that one realizes what is right and what is wrong. It's not there in animal form. If we don't know what is right and what is wrong, then we are in tamoguna. Even in human form, you'll find many people who are in this state of mind, who don't know what is right and what is wrong. So they are actually in tamoguna. What is favorable is to desire what is right and what is wrong. If you know what is right and what is wrong, in the desire of God, they are in the mode of goodness. You see the difference? If you don't know what is right and what is wrong, it is tamoguna. But if you know what is right and what is wrong and what is the desire of Krishna or what is the desire of God, then you are in mode of goodness. Except the revelation in Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that who we are and what is our existence and how do we come from. One may be so, that philosophical proof can be accepted. It's like, I will accept only if you prove what is right. Can you go and ask your father saying that you prove me or my father, then I'll accept you as my father? No. So philosophically, or, in the Shastra, it is very clearly given to us what is our condition. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna hammers this again and again. Krishna declares that everything comes from him. And there's no other person who has ever dared to declare. Have you heard any Swamiji or any, so-called Swamiji authoritatively saying that everything comes from me? Nobody has dared. But Krishna in Bhagavad Gita declares this very clearly. 10.8. Aham sarvasa prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. Iti matva vajante mam pura bhava samanvita. What does he say? I am the source of all spiritual and material world. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So here the difference is very clearly said. Krishna confirms authoritatively saying that everything comes from me. Have you ever heard anybody declaring it so boldly, saying that with so much of confidence and confirmation that everything comes from me? No, nobody can declare. It's only God who can declare. Again in 18.66 Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sarva dharman paritajya mahamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishami mahasucha. Abandon all varieties of religion. He doesn't say that, do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this. No. He says, abandon all kind of religion and just surrender unto me. And what he confirms, I shall deliver you from all the sinful reactions. And at the end, he says, do not fear. No, that's the purport where Krishna confirms himself, saying that you don't have to fear while I'm there. And again, these are so authoritatively it is given. Krishna says, I am everything. I am seated in everyone's heart, which is that shloka. Sarvasya chaham hridayasannivishto matta smritir nanam apohanam cha. Vedesya sarvam aham veva vaidyo vedanta kridveta eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Does he say somebody else is to be known, something else is to be known? No. He says, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna confirms this time and again in Bhagavad Gita. And we have so many people who actually read Bhagavad Gita, but miss out the essence. And this essence is missed out because of the ego that we have. But if we start understanding, saying that Krishna is to be known, Krishna is the center, Krishna is to be served, then you're Krishna conscious. If you read Bhagavad Gita to enjoy the ego of Krishna, not your self-ego. If your self-ego is there, your false ego is there, then you will not enjoy or you will not understand that Krishna is everything. But when you have the true ego, and if you start enjoying what Krishna is saying, then you want to read it again and again and again. Try this out. When you read Bhagavad Gita, put everything at the lotus feet of Krishna and say, Krishna is saying this, Krishna is this, Krishna is that, Krishna is this, how he looks. No. So in that sense, when you start to enjoy the ego of Krishna, then you will start relishing with him. A devotee who reads this describes the glories of the Lord. That is a part of our spiritual life. That's why human life is so special, so important. Because animals cannot describe, he cannot glorify the Lord. There's a very special experience before we are born. We realize God. Atheists are also not very far, as we discussed earlier. Animals are very, very far from that. Every human being is preachable. Many times we say he's from this faith, he's from that faith. No. It is only the covering. It is only the covering on the degree of the covering which is seen, which is higher. But every human being is preachable. Everybody can be preached. The only possibility that happens is he forgets this because he is out of pain and fear and he prays. So we have to love him in our prayers. We have to learn. He doesn't force you, but he says, please love me in your prayers. One has to voluntarily take up this, and he should not be forced onto it. One should lovingly serve God. And Krishna says, Sambhavami yuge yuge. I come every yuga. In one of the quotes, Srila Prabhupada said, those who are chanting Hare Krishna will be saved and the others will perish. What does it mean? It means that all the crazy people will be wiped out and Krishna consciousness will flourish. This is the prediction. Golden age. What is the prediction in the golden age? That there will be golden age where everybody will be a devotee, and then they will all flourish. A devotee is completely secured. Krishna says this, because he is my eternal part and parcel. And I am his protector, I am his provider, etc. This is the devotee's meditation. Devotee always has to meditate saying that he is my eternal father, he is my protector, he is my provider. Everything is Krishna for me. And that's the meditation that one has. So material world is never a peaceful settlement. But I want peace and vairagya. The only option that I have is when I depend on the Lord. And how do I depend on the Lord? When I have the tattva right in my place. You may ask this question, where is your home? Your home is actually in the super soul. Unless we learn to surrender to super soul, unless we cry, unless we have faith, and unless we take him as our maintainer, we will never ever be happy. And if you say, I am this body, fear will definitely come. So one has to say that I am not this body. And there will be no fear like the animals, because the animals are fearful because they feel there will be somebody who will come and kill me and eat me. There's somebody who will come and use my flesh, who will use my skin, all that. And that's the reason the animals are very, very scared, or they're very fearful. So just to wrap it up, the understanding in this particular verse is about the understanding of the tattva. The tattva is I'm a part and parcel of Krishna. And if we think that I have to serve him, I have to take care of him, he is my maintainer, he will ensure that everything falls in place, then one becomes Krishna conscious. How does one become Krishna conscious? Once he realizes that he is not independent, he is under control of Krishna, and Krishna will protect him, he will take care of him, he will maintain him, then he becomes Krishna conscious. So these prayers are very, very effective on each one of us, on everybody, saying that how difficult it is just a trailer actually, which is given as to how difficult it is for the living entity to be in the womb. And when the living entity is, given that freedom, come to material world, come to earth planet, he has to see, he has already seen, or it has already been described in the form where Lord Ramachandra or Lord Krishna has seen so many people. It is given in our Shastras. Yeah. So when one gets the human soul, it is very important that when one gets the human form of life, it is very important that one remembers Krishna and takes the path of Krishna consciousness and goes back home, back to Godhead. I'll just read the translation for benefit of all of us. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received the condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. So, very important, very nice verse that we discussed today from as to how the soul suffers, how the whole soul goes through so many challenges in the material world. And only by surrendering and accepting Krishna as our caregiver, one can really be liberated from this suffering. It says the conditioned life is given by Krishna, and he also takes away the fear. Krishna takes away the fear from us so that we can practice our spiritual life very nicely. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or if you have any comments, please go ahead and make them. Thank you very much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Natai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.